Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. We're always trying new stuff, so
Yeah.
let's take a go.
Yeah, so this is a special one. I don't know that we've only done one video episode, and that was with Jason Lee and the team at Salt Labs. That was awesome. We did that at HR Tech, but this one we're going to do very special. I thought we would give a tour of the Payroll Profession Confidence Index that is newly out. And yeah, just give everybody a look at what it says.
That's right. And so instead of having a whole team of production specialists like we had with Jason, right, we're going to do our usual do it yourself. Let's see what
Yep.
happens.
Here we
But we
go.
just felt like, if you can't see the report as you go along, if that's an option for you to take a look, doing it all via audio is, could be a little tougher. So let's bring it to life.
So look, I'm really, really excited. If you've listened to the previous episode or all of my ranting across the internet for months about the Payroll Profession Confidence Index, I would tell you if you'd like to go back and listen to that episode, you can hear sort of the origin of this. But fundamentally, the Payroll Profession Confidence Index is a sentiment-based analysis dedicated to the payroll profession. It's all about understanding how the profession is feeling about the future, about technology, the way they're being treated by their organizations, how they're being invested in or not. What their biggest needs are, how the impact can be for the organization when payroll is invested in and championed and cared for. And so super excited and really appreciate everybody taking their time to give us this input.
Yeah, thanks. You had some really great response, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We had over 700. I'm just popping up the table of contents here. We had over 700 folks take it. Now, I'll be honest, we had almost 4,000 touch it and come through to it, but not finish it or not start it. So we got to work on that. We've got to get everybody. I want every practitioner around the world. There's a hell of a lot more than 700 of you. There's more than 4,000 of you. So I want to get every payroll professional on the planet putting their input into this. And I'm working on something that is going to try to bring this to life permanently. So hopefully we'll get there and we'll have that. But yeah, 28 countries as well were represented. 5 continents. So really exciting. We had a great turnout from Australia, from Africa, nice turnout from Asia even. So very happy with what we had here.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
everybody who not only completed it, but helped spread the word and get the word out. Excited to kind of see it and then see how it's going to live on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, look, what I thought I'd do is just do a little tour today and just talk a little bit about what we saw. Maybe you could, I know you've got some questions, Julie. Maybe we could go through that a little bit and then, wrap it up and get ready to go off on this holiday weekend.
All right, let's call it a tour. Let's go on. Let's be explorers today.
All right. So look, we've got basically primarily these 5 sections, right? And really it's 3 sections. It's the sentiment based analysis. It's the operational health of the payrolls out there. And then of course, what impact they're bringing and how you can draw that impact out. So you'll find each of these are available here. And then of course, we've got an appendix that breaks down various different views of the smaller companies, right? Those below 1,000 employees, and then those above 1,000 based on compared to the norm or the averages. And then, of course, we did that for single country footprints and multi-country or multi-region and global footprints. So we really tried to give you some slices and dices here. Before we dig into it, I just want to give you a little bit of background. So one of the things that we did with this was very carefully crafted. We worked with a number of professional researchers to get their opinions. We asked payroll practitioners and payroll leaders and professionals. We also asked some payroll executive types that are very high level to give their input. We asked for some of the payroll associations to help us. The payroll org was generous enough to give us their opinions as well. And we had a lot of input on this. It took well over a year. I know you looked at it, Julie. And so what we did was we really built this on kind of an NPS sort of style. So the majority of the questions are single answer questions rating from 1 to 5 or picking from 1 to 5. And in some cases, there are places where we allowed people to pick top 3 or most impactful in a group. So there's multiple choice, but primarily you're going to see largely that. And I'll explain how we reported this out. So again, you've got your sentiment, your operations, your impact, and of course the appendix is going to have all your extra details, as well as your demographics, which I'm actually going to skip to first, if that's okay, Julie. I'm going to go to the end.
I think that's great.
Yeah, I want to talk about the demographics. And then I thought we could come back to the sentiment because the exec summary really kind of summarizes the whole thing. If someone only has a few minutes to read 3 slides, that would be it. But each one will break down and it rolls up to that. So let's do that. I'm just going to jump us. Let me switch over here. I want you to come over here to the demographics because this is one of the things that really stood out for me. This is really concerning. What do you see here that makes gives you concern on this screen?
We've long heard talk about the payroll and how folks are retiring and aging out of it, right?
Yeah.
And concern for the fact that there aren't enough new entrants into this field, and a worry about how exactly we're going to staff payroll and get payroll done.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've got, I mean, close to what, 80, I mean, 70 some percent there that is, or well over 70%, I should say, that is fundamentally above 10 years, right? I mean, 50% above 20. So we're going to lose a lot of people here in the coming years. And I think we've got to really prioritize getting folks earlier in their career to come into the payroll profession. So this is something that really, really stood out to me. I just want to show you real quick here to the respondents. Again, we had 28 countries represented. That is, I think that's impressive. I don't know what survey has reached that before in this space. Maybe there has, but I was very happy with that. I would have liked to have seen Europe show up a little bit better. We could have used a little bit more help in that area. But otherwise, we did really good. And thank you to Australia. They really turned out. They really, really turned out in this. So great job. Okay, so also we, like I said, we go on into areas of where we'll look at things like the size of the companies. We had a nice little swath there. Good bit of about half were single country. So we had about the other half, obviously, being multi-country, multi-region, and global, of course. So good mix here.
That's important. Folks always want to
Yeah,
know, and I think it's a slicing and dicing, right? Where
yeah,
you're able to, if you want to get a little bit of like me kind of
yeah.
insights, they're all there and all available. But these are the things that folks most want to cut
Absolutely,
the data by.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's jump back. I want to come back to our sentiment analysis now. I want to go back to our sections here, and I want to kind of talk you through the pieces of this, right? So we've got the outlook of professionals, we've got the respect and perception, and then of course we've got how well executives are engaging them. So let's jump into this first one. So not so bad, right? I'd say there's a cautious optimism if I were to grade this. I think payroll professionals are largely excited and cautious, but also cautiously optimistic about the future. There's a lot of concerns for what AI is going to do. But one of the things that really stood out to me here was just the unwillingness by organizations to modernize or change. I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers to payroll right now. In addition to the shrinking talent pool, right? We're just seeing it's what I think is driving a lot of the managed services right now. In addition to some of the innovation transformation as well. So positive, pretty much here. And of course, empowered by technology. I think most professionals feel that way, as you can see. But there is that sort of hesitation about what may be coming.
Yeah, and I do think, in that top concerns where AI and automation, digitization show up with the
Yeah,
aging workforce that we talked about. I mean, it stands to reason that folks that are in the field and, might not be in it for that much longer are thinking, either this is going to take my job away or, it's not such a big deal because it's all getting automated anyways. And
yeah.
neither one of those ends of the spectrum is really all that keen, right?
Yeah, yeah. And look, again, I'll say I think AI is friend, not foe. I think it's a tool. I think it's going to be an enabler, and I think it's going to create some really interesting careers for people if they can lean in and become champions of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
All
keep
right,
going in
let's
sentiment
go.
here.
Here's where I really got upset. This is concerning, right? We've got about half of the professionals feeling highly or very highly respected. That means less than half, or about half, or I'd say less, obviously, are not, and that's a problem. We shouldn't have. We shouldn't have. That should be a small number, if anything. It really needs to be zero, to be honest. And then, of course, just the level of perception for payroll, right? And we gave some definitions to this and tried to see how people operations were being perceived. So you can see less than 40% are seen as a center of expertise or an outlet of proactive engagement, which is concerning. We got a lot of work to do here. And you can see some of the quotes here from around the qualitative data that we collected and some of the things where people are saying, look, HR just doesn't know what the heck we
Yeah.
do.
Pete, the
Yeah,
one immediately to the right is the one that struck me the most when I had a
yeah,
chance to see this. And that is, I hear a lot of times that this idea that everything comes together at payroll and it's always just in time. There's not a lot of extra time accommodations when you're trying to get payroll out on a schedule, and it becomes payroll's fault.
oh
And in
yeah,
fact,
yeah,
a lot of the failures that are happening at that juncture of all of those key processes, don't the root cause is not payroll. And so that just makes the job all that more complex,
yeah.
and yet that's where the symptoms appear and where things get loud.
Yeah. Look, I'll go as far as to say it's a systemic ignorance, if you want to be honest. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that to say that people just don't know. I mean, how many times, Julie? I know you've been there. I know you've been there. I've worked in a Fortune 100 company as as a payroll leader. I have advised many of the biggest companies on the planet around payroll in my consulting days, and I can tell you how many times I sat in conference rooms with major decisions or major actions that are happening around the business that were causing impact to humans, which they almost always do. Um, and anytime anything even sounded remotely close to payroll, most of HR was shoving their fingers in their ears, running for the hills. You'd thought we'd have dropped a bomb in the middle of the room or something, right? It's like, I mean, and what drives me crazy about that, and I posted this the other day, is that I know as a leader, my team and we knew more about HR and the business than HR thought they did. And a lot of times we were coaching them on what they should have been doing because they had no clue, because they're so siloed and so focused in their world. And what they do is so important that they don't take time to understand any of the integration or synergies with the other teams. But we don't have that choice in payroll. We have to understand the process, everyone's process, every business process, because it all rolls down to us. And so, take a minute and go have a conversation with one of your payroll people. Listen to them. They actually might know a hell of a lot more than you're giving them credit for. And the less than stuff has just got to stop. You're absolutely tying both your feet together. It's like a one-legged sack race. You know those, you know those sack races at the fair or whatever you do, or you get with a buddy. That's what you're doing. Like, take your leg out of the sack and sprint, and that's help getting payroll involved, right? And so, yeah, have some respect and start understanding what they do, because there's definitely a problem with that.
Yeah, and that gets more and more prolific. I think the larger the organization gets, where you have discrete roles and handoffs, right? And things, one has to do a part and the other has to do another part. Payroll has a very
Yeah.
tangible, quantitative role, and that's how they understand the data. And HR has, a different role that's more people centric and people focused, and so it's different lenses. As you move down market, those are in the same person more,
Yeah. Oh
often,
yeah.
more
Yeah.
more often than not. And so yeah, so it shows up in different ways in different client organizations and to different degrees. But your survey certainly
Yeah.
showed that there are folks that are feeling that acutely, and it undoubtedly affects the value that they feel they bring to the organization, and that's the
Oh yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
bouncing back to our exec summary here, I put this in there this year. I want to show you this. Right? Payroll is an iceberg, right? I gave a video on this. It's a hell of a lot more than what you're seeing above the waterline. That's what you see above the waterline, the employee experience, and mostly only if someone complains, paychecks that come out, and maybe the reports that you get or don't get for your organization. But here's what's really going on, and this is being polite. This is. I mean, we probably need 3 or 4 pages for this. Um, and focus down there on the bottom, right? It's pretty much, in addition to the mammoth tasks that they have, it's probably also any and everything that anybody doesn't want to do that sounds like payroll, because HR's got their fingers shoved in their ears. So yeah, wake up. There's a lot more going on below the iceberg, and you don't want to be the Titanic and sink because of payroll. All right, let's come back. Hey, they need to hear it. We need to hear it.
Pete,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to temper your
temper me,
fingers in the
temper me.
ears visual, because
Yeah.
it's really not that bad all over, right? There are places where that's the
Oh
case,
no.
but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, you're giving me a visual that's giving me
Am I
the
exaggerating
chills.
in your career? Am I exaggerating? You sat in front of so many different executives in so many rooms for transformation. How many times have you seen it?
It depends. I'll tell you, it
Yeah.
totally
Depends on the
depends. But
culture of the org. Yeah.
let's also think about, sometimes HR owns payroll, they're all one
True.
team, and sometimes
True.
they don't. And so those different nuances
True.
make all the difference, right? In
Oh
in
yeah.
in that visual that you're painting.
But just the less than stuff, right? Like that, there's a systemic less than problem. I mean, I would argue that with anybody. I feel it. I'm payroll famous, and I feel it. So I felt it my entire career. I've seen it. I watch people struggle through it, and it's just unacceptable anymore. It really is unacceptable.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stems from what the job came from, right?
Yep.
It came from a
Yep.
bookkeeper job, and
Yeah.
how the job has evolved over decades, and how it's so far from being, a bookkeeper and a
Oh
calculator
yeah.
puncher, that it's
Oh
just a very different skill. It's a different job, and it's much more. elevated,
Yeah.
right? There's a
Yeah.
lot more required, and not all comp structures, not all organizations have kind of
Yeah.
evolved. Not all job descriptions have evolved.
Oh, yeah. I would argue there are a lot of organizations whose HR hasn't even evolved to even catch up to payroll, right? So, yeah. But look, go and listen to the episode we did with Kieran, right? I mean, in Australia, you can go to prison for payroll if you do it wrong. It's actually driving a lot of people to sort of question whether they want to stay in payroll, right? If you've got an employer who won't invest, and now I'm responsible for what happens legally, I don't know if I want that responsibility, right? So, yeah, it's very concerning. But yeah, so this is one we did an episode on. Again, it's a shameless plug here, but we did talk about the invested leader versus a leader that's investing. And as you can see, that's not exactly where we need to be, right? We need to get that much, much higher. I'd love to see 2/3 or more, at least at this point. And so this means what we really asked here is how well adequately are your organizations and your executives investing in you? That would be monetary dollars to do what you need to do, or the resources to do what you need to do, versus how well are they invested? How much do they walk the talk in bringing you to the table, in championing you as a cultural norm, as a priority in their HR strategy? And this is again an area where I think we've got to see some change. And the impacts to this we're going to talk about later are material when you see what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure as we think about on, just making this available in some form in on an ongoing basis,
Yeah.
I think we should have a goal here,
Yep.
60%
Yeah.
by, whatever. And so more to come on that,
Oh
right? It
yeah.
feels like
Yeah.
a challenge that we should rise to.
We do, and this is the first iteration. We're gonna keep this going. We learned some things from this. I have to admit, there's things I would have done differently a little bit, but I'm very pleased with how this came out, and the reception has been amazing. I've had, and thank you to everyone who's seen this and complimented me. I really appreciate it. It wasn't about that; it's about the profession, and if that's all we get out of this, I'll be happy. So, yeah. All
All
right,
right. Did we check
let's
all
talk
the
operations.
sentiment boxes? Yeah, let's move
That's
to
it.
operations.
Let's do it. Here we go. Operations. So here we're going to talk operational health. We're going to talk about the digital technology impact, and we're also going to talk about what payroll investments are actually key. And there's some surprising answers here, which I think really came out to me. So let's talk about first maturity, right? We've only got about 12% of the population that responded to us saying they are operating in a fully mature state. And we provided definitions of what that was, mostly around tech. We couldn't get so deep with this to get too into your all of your operational maturities, but we really just looked at the infrastructure, how harmonized, how centralized things were, and so we gave that in the appendix. So you'll see the levels in the back, so you can kind of gauge yourself if you'd like. Centralization is decent, right? We got about 60% saying they're centralized. Now, keep in mind, half of these were single country. So I'd have to probably dig later with you to see the centralization with
I was
the,
going to say that
yeah, there's a little less for
impacts that.
sure. I think it's in the
Yeah,
50s
it's
with your,
surprising when you look domestic only. So yeah, that's an area
yeah.
where slicing and dicing makes a difference.
Yes, and you're gonna see that here at the bottom. And keep in
Yeah.
mind what we did here was, again, MPS style. We looked at all of the folks that answered again on a 1 to 5. We said 4 and 5 being the higher end, 1 and 2 being the lower end, 3 kind of being neutral. When we're looking at this and saying fully centralized, right? We're looking at those that gave 4s and 5s for those answers. So what I do in the back is I normalize those against the types of customer as well, or the respondent as well. But really what we're looking at is who is operating at the high end versus those that are not. And so that's how we've kind of carved this up, just to clarify.
Right.
And then one thing I think is really concerning here is the viability, right? We've only got about half of the organizations saying that they have confidence, a high level of confidence, that their operations in payroll are able to support the strategic direction of their business in the next 3 years. That's a problem. That's a problem. And we got to fix that because that's a competitive gap right there for you. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Let's
I mean,
go.
not
Yeah.
supporting payroll is not an option for operations,
No,
right? So
no.
yeah, let's keep moving
Yeah,
here.
and it's more than the paycheck, right? I mean, you can really get in some trouble if you don't do these things right with taxes and other things.
Yeah.
So we did only ask one technology question in this research, and the reason for that is because we didn't want to make it so much about technology. There's plenty of research on that. We wanted it to be about the practitioner and the leaders that are out there running and managing our payrolls. And so you can see kind of not a huge surprise here. Obviously, AI didn't jump up to the top, but I think you can see that cloud technology has been the most enabling solution. And these were ones where we asked multiple choice. So you're not going to see a total to 100 here. I should probably note that in our report revision. But yeah, so obviously mobile ESS making huge impact, analytics. And interestingly, there were some differences in how these came out for smaller versus larger companies that I'll point out as we get to the end. But yeah, just a quick look at what they thought about tech.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I thought was interesting. When we asked about the most impactful investments that you could have, we asked what is it, right? I mean, and again, here's where you could do top three. So this is not going to equal to 100, but look what's first there, Julie, right?
I know, I know. The
Education.
first 3,
Yeah.
actually. When I
Yeah.
looked at this, just putting those first 3 together and saying, it's about the talent and the skills,
And the
and it's
respect.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the respect, and that is just
Yeah.
screaming out of these results,
Oh
right?
yeah, and cloud technology popped up obviously all the
Yeah,
way to the
yeah, of
right. Now
course.
your transformation was key for the multi-country orgs. I note that there, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that later here on our breakdown. So this was surprising to me. I actually sort of thought transformation would have been higher. But this is good. This is cool. This is cool to know. This is good to know that our folks are asking for help. And they're asking for it in an area that I think you should be investing in all of your parts of your company anyway, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. All right, let's talk impact. This is where some eye-opening stuff came around, and we asked about things like ROI and value realization, and we defined that for the survey takers. We asked about partnerships, how well they partner with the other parts of the organization, and then how you could best champion payroll to get the most value out of them strategically. And so here's what we learned, right? We learned that only about a third of the operations are delivering that high level of strategy impacting value to their businesses. And about three-fourths, right, are not confident that the organizations are doing enough to actually draw it all out, draw that strategic impact out. And then, of course, 66% are not in confidence, highly confident that their corporate cultures and their executives are aligned to even elevate payroll to begin with. So they've taken their eye off the ball, so to speak, or never put it on the ball, I guess you could say, and missing out on a lot of value and opportunity here, really.
yeah. And I think the other thing could be, in some situations, it could just be that that message and that importance is
Yeah.
making its way down to the folks that are actually doing, the work.
Yeah.
Because like senior leaders, we often in conversations with them, they will poignantly say, like, payroll can't go
Yeah.
wrong. Like, we cannot have a big bomb in the payroll space. And so they recognize that, at least binarily, right? Like, it's a critical function.
Yeah.
And yet figuring out how that becomes maybe a more robust leadership guiding light, right? And
Yeah.
how that gets communicated into the ranks, into the payroll ranks. There's a disconnect there as well, for sure, for some
Oh yeah.
organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to know. I wish we had enough space and time and effort to understand too, if these organizations across all of these answers are what state of transformation they're in
Yeah.
from a finance or
Mhm.
HR perspective, because
Yeah.
I think that might be somewhat telling as to how payroll has sort of evolved or not, maturity wise. But also, I'd be curious to know to have executives take this same survey,
Yeah.
and I'd love to be able to contrast and compare what the executives said to the people who took it, but that's almost nearly impossible. So
Yeah, well, maybe
someday.
we can maybe we can toy around with figuring
I
out how to
know.
do it with select client, in
Yeah.
some client situations where, the framework's already here, results for comparison purposes are already here.
Yeah.
Like, let's dig into a couple of case studies, right? And see
Yeah.
how that all plays out. That
I
could
am
be
trying to
fun.
figure out some benchmarking capabilities with this research. So yeah, we'll more on that to come. We'll
Mhm.
find
Yeah.
that out. So okay, let's go with the next piece here. This is the really key slide. To me, this is the most important slide in this entire presentation or report. Look at what happens when your strength of partnerships are better, right? Look at the executive leaders. On a 1 to 5, we've got executive leadership the lowest in terms of strength of partnership with payroll. Now, that sounds like it might make sense, right? I mean, HR and finance being at the top. I'd like to see IT a little stronger, to tell you the truth. And I'm surprised legal wasn't stronger as well. And I think you could probably, I actually want to go back and do some slicing and dicing on small, big,
Yeah.
multi-country, small country, or excuse me, single country in order to understand this. But clearly, what we can see here is that when payroll operations have closer and stronger executive relationships, they're 42% more likely to have that alignment that is prioritizing them. It's 50% more likely to be viewed as a COE or instead of versus the simple processor sort of connotation. And they're 26% more confident in their ability to enable strategic direction while delivering 3x the value and strategic impact and ROI back to their businesses. So it's there, right? It's championing payroll has material business outcomes and payroll outcomes, and those are incredibly important. So I'm hoping that we'll see this as an opportunity to get that three much higher up into the fours and fives for executive engagement.
Yeah, and I'll be
Yeah,
excited also to see, how can we use some of these findings to figure out, a quantitative impact to a business
yeah,
case, for example, because that's
yeah,
always one of the sticking points in trying to get approval or trying to get buy-in for some sort of a bigger transformation. And so it feels like we have you have found the beginnings of
yeah.
something that might be quite useful.
I hope so, and I want to dig down into some of these too. We're gonna shape this for next year and the next year, right? We're gonna continue to figure out what we need to dig into, and maybe there's some pulse surveys you and I could work on some of
Mhm.
this, where we could
Great.
crack this apart. I think this would be a good one for us with your transformation slant. We oughta work together
Yeah.
on this one.
Yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
get this number up. Okay, let's do one more here and talk about what is it. What are the best ways that leaders can invest, if you will, in prioritizing payroll and how they can champion payroll best for success. And look, far and away, it's bringing them proactively to the table. We call it a seat at the table. It's really just engaging them and getting them involved in strategic initiatives much faster.
Mhm.
Investing and engaging them to prioritize it within your culture, and making sure that they have adequate investment to actually do what they need to do. So, yeah, not a lot of, I mean, not surprising here. I don't know what I was expecting on this one,
Yeah.
but I think the things that I expected to bubbled up well. And I was happy to see that budget didn't just hit the top because I think there's so much more to it than just money.
That was one of my
Yeah,
first observations too, as well as, in the bottom right, you have investments in the payroll operating model
yeah,
modernization. And then the top left, like, so those middle couple are are the areas where we actually see the most client work happening, right?
yeah,
So actually, hands on, there's some very tangible things that you can do between the operating model and the integrations strategies and kind of figuring out how all the tech
yeah,
piece fits together that really can start to bring some of this to life. And that's where I see a lot of clients focusing is in that spot.
yeah.
It's very tangible.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. It's good
a lot
stuff.
you
And
can
look,
do there.
I think what we're hearing is payroll say, give us an opportunity, give us a voice, invest in us, give us the ability to actually perform our jobs at without one leg in the bag, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let us run with both legs and let us sprint and show you our skill and show your athleticism. And that's all they want, right? They just want some engagement, they want some respect, and they want some inclusivity. And I think everyone's asking for that. I don't know why payroll isn't part of the priority in that, but that's it, right? And I think that I think you can actually you don't just have to spend money. You can actually just care, just prioritize them. You certainly do have to keep them modern. Certainly do have to invest in payroll, just as you do, anything else in the business. But I think it's a lot of it can be empathy and just understanding them and being able to try to help move obstacles for them to be the best they can be.
Yeah.
So.
Great point.
Cool. Okay. So look, I want to let me just give you a couple little show points here on the appendix so you can see, and then we'll bounce back to that executive summary. I want to show you what that looks like. So basically, like I said, you're going to have your maturity scale in here, your demographics, and then of course the breakdowns by type of business. So maturity scale is right here. We shared this when we gave the survey, so people had something to look at and bench themselves off of. And again, this is very tech focused. It's not all that you would need to be a mature operating model. You would definitely need to think about your processes. You'd have to think about your staffing, your governance model. There's so many things I know you, Julie, help people with. So this is really just a kind of a baseline to say how technically infrastructure sound are you
Yeah. And
in that way.
consolidation, right? Especially
Yeah.
when you're
How
beyond.
harmonized. Yeah.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
harmonized and centralized are you? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, we had the demographics, which we've already kind of shown you. But I'm going to show you this here for what we did for single country versus multi country. You can see some of the differences here. What we did was we basically looked at, like I said, all the high end 4 and 5, the most confident folks versus those that are not, and gave you the percentages of those numbers. And so you're seeing your single country left, multi country right, and your overall kind of average down the middle. And where you see gold, in a let number, that means it's 5 points higher than the average. Where you see red, it's 5 points lower than the average, at least. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
you
the
can see.
obvious one being centralization, right? So
Yes.
in a single
Yeah.
country model where it's locations that are centralizing, you'd expect that to be a lot higher. And when it's
Yeah.
a multi country model, it's not a slam dunk that all of those are coming together under the
Yeah. I thought it
same
was interesting.
operating.
That's totally true. Totally true.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting you see here that the perception is higher for multi country practitioners and leaders. So that's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, not a lot, but still a good pop there. And then, of course, viability over on the multi-country side. We got a lot of opportunity there to get folks mature and not just
Feeling it
that, but
and feeling it.
viable.
Yeah.
Viable, yeah, exactly. So good. All right, let's go in here too. We also kind of broke down some of the top investments, most impactful tech, and then of course ways to champion. Again, transformation and change was maybe the only key thing different for the multi-country guys. Um, and then, of course, we did the same thing here for small firms, large firms. And again, you can see really the glaring piece here is probably that viability. I think you've got some better viability on your smaller firms, obviously because they're dealing with so much less complexity and often less chaos. So
I think it's also pretty interesting to see the outlook, in the
yeah,
larger firms is
yep,
significantly higher. And
mhm,
I believe that some of that has to do with resourcing and, probably some of the movement
yeah.
toward technology that has been helpful already. And, I think that's gotta play into that.
Oh yeah, and what compliance criticality and other
Yeah.
things are much more intense in a bigger company and much more sometimes public and ramified. So I would hope that our all of our companies are investing, but maybe what we're seeing is a little bit more investment by the bigger firms. Actually, not if you look at the transformation down below, a little less, but right on average, I guess. So, okay, here's where we
Right.
saw a few little differences. Your smaller firms actually quite keen on digital payments more so than others for most impactful digital tech. I think that's probably because on your smaller firms, you probably might have some of the franchises, some of the more frontline type businesses that may be dependent on keeping people and earned wage access might be the way they do
Yeah.
that. So
Sure. Sure.
yeah. And then, of course, integration with HR and broader HCM strategy. That is not surprising to me. I've been hearing a lot of my smaller business firms I talk to. My wife is a small business practitioner, HR practitioner, where the organizations are needing to go from fundamentally being a process centric HR to being more of a strategic centric HR and getting away from just doing payroll time and benefits and getting to more talent science and, making sure that they are using analytics and data to help them make better informed decisions and talent, be more talent and cultural focus. So I think that's a growing issue with a lot of folks out there,
Yep. For
younger
sure.
firms. So, okay. And then, of course, I give a little thank you here. But let's go back to the exec summary and we will pop up. I just want to show you what that looks like. First of all, we gave you what I would call the report on a slide. So, this is really this report in one page that you can kind of look at. It's a nice infographic we're going to be sharing, and we'll be making some more of these as well. And you're welcome to share it as well if anyone out there wants to pass it around. If you come here to the my iceberg, we already saw this, but this will give executives an idea of kind of what payroll's doing. And then, of course, we just sort of summarized and brought up a number of the key points across the report here for you to have a quick 4 slide read. Probably take you 15-10 minutes,
Yeah.
and you could digest all this pretty quick. So,
So, Pete, what
so
I
yeah,
think is the most interesting speaking point about the executive summary here
yeah,
is the experience that we had when we were at the executive summit at
yeah,
Payroll Org a couple of weeks ago. And here we had a forum with 60,
yeah.
80. I don't know exactly how many. We had a good number of executives
It was
there.
50 plus. Yeah,
And 50 plus, yeah.
yeah,
And so we started the day, really trying to interact with senior leaders around these
yeah.
things. And very quickly, while we'd pulled a few excerpts from the report, very quickly the conversation really got very robust around change and
Yeah.
change management, and the idea of bringing change to the organization, in payroll, and the payroll touching impacts to that, and some of the war stories, or the perpetual mysteries of doing that. And
Yeah.
to me, it was just very encouraging to see that senior leaders are engaged, and easily and quickly in thinking about the challenges that it will involve
Oh
to
yeah.
to boost the game, right,
Yeah.
and to engage, and to really make a run at some tangible things in this space. and
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and I don't know, there's nothing about the data that would have expected us to go there, but leadership is engaged, and they are interested, and
Yeah.
that I thought was, that since this is all about sentiment, to me that was the greatest
Yeah.
reinforcement of your work, was to see that happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. Look, I mean, that's all this is about. Is just awareness, just bringing people a message to say to help change the narrative for payroll. And I hope that's what we've done. We had a good turnout, but we got to do it better. We're going to do better next time. I'm hoping to keep this thing alive. I really am working to put this online forever. So that people can come and use it. And I hope maybe I can get to a point where I can help you benchmark with it.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to use it with their customers, or they want to use it, you're welcome. Just download it. I'll put the links in the description. Reach out if you have questions. You want me to come talk to you about it? I'm happy to do that. And yeah, just want to get it out there and get more people to be aware of what's going on.
So, listen, on
Yeah,
behalf of everyone, I know you've heard this as
yeah,
well, through individual feedback, but thank you. This was a
yeah,
passion project of yours, and it's the first of its kind. I know, focusing on sentiment in a functional area that is so important to all of us, and really critical to
yeah,
companies, and feels like it needs a pat on the back, and also a little cheerleading, to let folks know that we know the criticality, right, of
yeah,
payroll in the organization. So
yeah. Thank you
so
for that.
now we actually see, there's actually something tangible to look at around payroll
Yes,
sentiment,
I
and
love
thank
it.
you,
I
thank you
love it.
for that.
Yeah. Look, thank you. And let's thank payroll, right? I mean, we couldn't have done this without payroll. We couldn't have done it without the associations that helped, everyone that got involved. Thank you so much. I'm a servant leader. I'm here to just be a voice. That's all. So
That's Pete saying, we love you guys.
I love you. I do love
Until
you guys.
next time.
All right. Well, look, hey, thank you so much for doing this, Julie. Thank you for all your help as well. Thanks for everyone that
Pleasure.
listened. Go check out the report, share it, like it, and let's do better on the next one. Let's get more. Let's get 1,400, 1,000, whatever it is, whatever we got to do to beat the 700. Let's raise those numbers. Let's get more people involved, and raise the awareness for payroll. All right. Next time. See you guys.
See ya.